Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Hutch, for the introduction. And so in this panel, we're going to talk about the future of real estate and insurance, or construction and insurance, which is a very rare and narrowly, it's a niche, I would say, right, when it comes to the technology. Today, we have with us David Burns, Director of Innovation and Field Application at McCarthy Building Companies. We have Mark Gardella, Senior Director of Open Innovation at Markle, and we have Alex Schwarzkopf, the CEO and co-founder of Pillar Technologies.
You nailed the last name.
Yes, nailed it. So, and my name is Ardalan Kasrapur. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO at Onsite IQ. So with that, I would ask our panelists to make a very brief introduction about who they are, their companies, and we'll begin the panel discussion after that. Please.
Great. Yeah. So mentioned Dave Burns, Director of Innovation at McCarthy. I've been focused on construction tech now for about 15 years. Started my career in Oracle, and so started more on kind of the ERP back office side, but have quickly shifted more towards field operations, the opportunities around technology in the field within the construction space. McCarthy is a top 20 E&R general contractor, about $4 billion a year. We do work in most parts of the United States, nothing international. We're the #1 healthcare builder in the US, so we build a lot of hospitals. We do a lot of higher education, civil. Glad to be here.
Hello, my name's Mark Gardella. I'm with Markel Corporation. Markel is a Fortune 500 P&C, specialty P&C carrier based in Richmond, but we have a global footprint. We're sort of like a miniature Berkshire Hathaway in that we have a venture side that invests in the non-insurance side. On the insurance side, as a specialty carrier, we tended to gravitate towards underserved markets and niche places. My role within Markel is within the open innovation, but my journey started almost 20 years ago when I was with Zurich. When I was asked to join an R&D unit to leverage this thing called the internet. To say that we were a little early, we learned a lot of lessons, which means we didn't write any premium because the technology wasn't there, and the buying behaviors weren't there. Fast forward now's the time, and that's why I'm so interested and so happy to be part of this ecosystem, because it's an opportunity to really change our industry. It's been the same last 300 years. Now's the time to change, and that's why we're engaged with Plug and Play, and that's why we love engaging with the startups and trying to get things done.
Thanks. Hey, everybody. My name is Alex Schwarzkopf. See a few familiar companies out there, which is exciting. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Pillar Technologies. You can think about us as building smart tech for construction sites. Our products measure environmental conditions on site that can lead to risk that affects property and people. And the idea is actually with smart sensors distributed across your job site, we can almost create like a nervous system that's capable of telling you what's happening, where it's happening, and how to reduce that risk. We work with major builders. We also have insurance partners. One of our biggest investors is an insurance carrier. And one of the interesting things I'll share, and we'll talk more about it, is in the last 6 months, I've had insurance companies moving faster than us to do a deal, which almost never happens, quite frankly. So that's been a really interesting trend that's starting to move, and Ardalan, I'm sure you can speak to that as well.
So I'll give you a little bit of background on me and Onsite IQ. We are a visual documentation and risk assessment platform for construction projects. So in a nutshell, we have a network of data collectors. They walk the sites with a backpack, which has a 360-degree camera on it. The data gets captured, mapped to the floor plan, and we analyze the data, and a risk engineer will look into the data. So we provide risk assessment on these construction projects. And the reason we started was a reality that insurance companies apparently don't have the resources to inspect 100% of their portfolio. They inspect 1 out of every 10. So we created a scalable and more affordable solution, or loss control risk engineering solution for the construction industry. So with that, as Hutch mentioned, there has been a rapid growth in an amount of investment in the construction domain, and also a lot of startups are coming out of Silicon Valley, New York, everywhere across the United States. And Dave, I'm sure that you get approached by many, many startups reaching out, trying to do a pilot, trying to sell the value prop. And we've noticed a lot of them talk about risk mitigation. Let us help you mitigate the risk. It could be safety risk, quality risk, or progress, any of those. And then one of the interesting things that comes with that is they mentioned, look, work with us and we'll get your insurer to give you a discount on top. Now, from your perspective, I wanted to see, has any of these pilots who are still active turned into a discount or incentive structure on the insurance side?
Yeah, so do you want just the short answer?
No.
No, yeah, so yes, a lot of startups coming at us with a lot of different sales pitches, much around productivity. That's what kind of sells within our industry and sells within within a general contractor, trade contractor context. Safety as probably a close second, but I'd say safety is very, very closely correlated with risk mitigation, right? There's quality as well, but safety is one of those that a lot of the startups have a heavy focus on. It's something that kind of touches to the person or the people side of the industry, so it goes a little bit beyond productivity. Like, how much money are you going to spend on safety? Like, you know, that's a hard question to answer, right? So, but as far as you know, the pitch around insurance and insurance premiums related to the construction tech space, most of those companies that are coming at us talking about risk mitigation, they're not doing the direct correlation, or they're not trying to draw that correlation to the insurance side. There's only a small subset, you guys kind of mentioned, that are really playing in that space. And I think it's a really interesting space to play in because you're kind of trying to fit where those two value propositions sit. Right now, for the testing that we've done, I'd say we've probably worked with 3 or 4 vendors that have kind of a market pitch towards that. But no, we have not actually realized an insurance premium reduction based on the application of the technology. I think that is, though, in part just because we're probably on the earlier side of implementing the solution, and I think a lot of those specifics are still being worked out between the parties.
Absolutely. And just to build on top of that question, Mark, what do you think is the reason that it takes so long or it never actually turns into an incentive plan or a discount structure around the premium?
Yeah, well, and just listening to David a little bit, and this is going to be a theme in some of the comments that I make going on, is understanding, and I always put myself in the shoes of who I'm targeting, the customer. And yes, insurance is probably within the top 3 of expense that a general contractor faces, being materials as a pass-through. So yeah, you absolutely, they want to manage that expense, but you also have to understand what is the biggest lift in terms of margins, and being able to address things like, how do you attract talent? How do you keep talent on the job site? How do you make that job site super efficient? So putting that value proposition, yeah, you can frame it from the standpoint of being able to reduce premiums, and I think that will be an after effect. But putting yourself in establishing your value proposition in the way that resonates with your customer and who you're targeting is pretty important. And that's not easy to do. It takes a lot of learning, a lot of testing, a lot of listening. And we in the insurance side are not particularly good at that as well. We design lots of products before ever really talking to our customers. And it's not going to come as a surprise. We can take some lessons from the tech side of the house and design thinking, product market fit, to be able to better put our customers at the center of it. And I have empathy for the startups, because you're 2, 3, 4-man shops who are trying to build tech, build your value proposition, and it's tough to bring some of those business development skills to the table. And those aren't ones that are easy to replicate, but it's very important to be able to bring that into how you approach your target audience. And I'd be curious, David, have you seen instances like that?
Well, I'm just thinking about how sometimes we get that sales pitch and it's like this, there's too tight of a correlation between the application of a technology and this like, poof, you've got this insurance premium reduction, right? Like, where I think there'd be much more effective support and adoption if you speak in the terms of the way that insurance is obviously being priced and measured today. So if it's like, you know, insurance as it relates to workers' comp claims, right? Yeah. So if you're going down the path of saying leveraging this technology is going to drive down your safety claims, which drives down your workers' comp claim, and you get that it's I think people get on board with that message a little bit more than like this immediate, you know, jump to, oh, insurance claims are going to go down because I'm leveraging this technology, right? There's not a trust around that. There's not a lot of trust around technology in general within the industry still. It's like, because of the reliability, the field conditions, how things change all the time. So there's always that in the back of most of our leaders' minds. Like really, is a technology can come in and be reliable enough and present data at a level that allows us to just, boom, turn around and do insurance premium reductions?
And I'll answer the question that you specifically asked about reduction of premium. And putting my underwriting hat on, one of the things I thought about and looked at when I was looking at particularly large companies is, how does that management think about their business? How do they manage their business? And one of the ways that you can tell a well-run company is, how do they think and holistically and long-term about their operation? If they are making investments in safety and they're thinking about their insurance carrier as a partner and their broker as a partner, that tells me that management company is long-term thinking. If you see, and we've seen every account, anybody who's on a broker side or carrier account, you can tell that account is actually looking for a reduction in premium solely to help improve their margins, and they could care less at the end result. You want a company, an insured, to think about being a partner and seeing those carriers and those brokers as a partner, and those investments in trying new safety, I think, illustrates that.
Yep. Great. So, Alex, you heard both sides of the argument, going through the contracting channel, going through the insurance, and there's also another point of entry, which is the broker, right? Being a startup, if you had to redo it again, go back, which point of entry would you pick? Or is this a multi-threaded kind of sales?
Follow the money. I think we spent a lot of time trying to talk to people that just didn't have the budget. So when we started building our business, we actually thought about it, that the general contractor was going to be able to deploy us across every single project, you know, overnight, right? And I think that's a lot of what you get all the time, and that's just quite frankly not true. They're dealing with owners and other stakeholders, and they have to take our technology, excuse me, and sell it to the owner. And so one of the things we recognized about a year and a half ago was, well, if we follow the money up, who's controlling the budgets? Okay, well, it's the owner. So if we can make the value proposition or the pitch to the owner about why putting this technology on their project will reduce exposure and get them finished with a quality property on time. As a side tangent, it helps the contractor, because our technology specifically is also a project management tool. So that was kind of the sales money side that we really had to figure out. We're just starting to get good at it. We're really seeing some exciting stuff happening. But if we think about non-linear sales opportunities, and this is what every startup kind of has to think about, I can go sell every owner, right? But I don't, you know, they may not have more than 4 projects at a time, et cetera. But what's interesting is this insurance marketplace with the broker and the carrier, they're seeing deals like VCC deals, right? They're saying, oh, do you want to write that property, this property, that property? So if you can get involved with that carrier or that broker, that then presents a non-linear sales opportunity, because it's like hit and miss. Like it's like you get 20 no's before you get a yes from a venture perspective. Well, it's the same thing with sales getting started early on. And so what we saw from an early stage was, if we can get involved with a carrier or a broker that really believes in the technology, that is going to be the way we scale the business, as opposed to the way we start the business. So that's just the nuance there. Yeah.
Great. And also, you mentioned about following the money, pitching to the owner. Owner likes it. They use the sensor. They use the technology. And then you're starting to create or capture data, right? Let's say we're talking about risk assessment here. And data is a double-edged sword, right? It could help you, and if you don't execute on it, it might actually hurt you. And I wanted to pick your brain, Dave, on the fact that, how do you view this, right? Someone comes to your job site, they're monitoring ambient condition, visuals, pictures, 24/7, right? Now you're creating this massive archive of documentation. How do you view that? Is this going to help you drive business, or it might actually hurt you in a litigation or in a case?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it before that our company, really any company that's successful in our industry, it's all about risk management, right? Understanding what your risks are and managing to those risks. And so when it comes to data collection, I mean, no question the conversation comes up, right? The conversation comes up around, it might have been webcams for a while. We've got a couple tests going where we're tracking workers, right? And the conversation from like a union perspective, right? The individual having a sensor on them is not the most comfortable thing. So you have to have a lot of these conversations about what data is being collected, why it's being collected, and what that data may be used for at some downstream point. So most of the time, I think, you know, I've seen a lot of our smarter, you know, operations leaders kind of, you're always weighing these things, right? It's never this black and white answer. So I think a lot of the weighing of the value proposition and the opportunities, say for like a pillar versus what may happen if you have too much data related to this stuff, I think that assessment is done on a technology by technology basis, and most of our guys, again, going back to the risk management piece, they know how to assess how big of a deal, how small of a deal it is, and it might be something that is more scope specific or project specific in which these decisions are going left or right.
Great. And Mark, from your perspective, when it comes to, let's say, claims, right? Having more data, you could settle, pay the claim right away, or you could push back on it, right? From an insurance or from a carrier perspective, how do you look at that data? Is it more helpful or not necessarily when it comes to the claims?
Well, we're in the insurance industry, so the idea of loving data is at our core. Whether we're able to consume it and make it into something that's actionable is another thing. This is a journey that this industry is going through, 300 years old. So I would characterize our industry as a whole is getting there, getting to the point where we can actually make that actionable. And I'll say that you can see evidence of where it really is, and again, it's about the customer and being able to serve our clients and our customers and their customers. And I'll give you an example on the personal lines where I just had my car keyed. And within
What'd you do, man?
I know. But it was kids. In any sense, within about 2 hours, that claim through text was actually settled. Sent in a picture. They asked, "Do I want?" Now, on the commercial side, we're not quite there. There's a level of data that you can capture from that, and I think the way that I think about this is pre-claim, post-claim. How can we prevent? And if I'm thinking about the contractor, understanding that managing the amount of data you collect, but also understanding that labor is a big component of their cost structure. If I can prevent using data and help our clients prevent risks, that's helping their bottom line. In post-claim, being able to defend a fraudulent claim and having the data to be able to understand that, which is what our clients want us to do. They don't want us to pay claims that the contract is not asking for. So it is a balance, and particularly because it's so litigious within the construction industry, it's a careful balance. And I think there's a level of, again, listening to our clients and our customers and understanding where they strike that balance within their own business. How much is too much data that puts them at risk for litigation and discovery versus being able to be preemptive in stopping a claim or preventing a fraudulent claim being paid out.
Absolutely. And speaking of data, I want to use that as a segue. And Alex, I know that you have tens of thousands of sensors on a job site across the country, and we have collected millions of square footage worth of images and walkthroughs in a job site. Now, when it comes to the relationship with the insurance carrier, right, it turns to be a one-way street typically where you have to give your data, but it's incredibly hard to get anything back. So as a startup, How would you approach this? How can you make some sort of leverage to bring their carrier to the table and tell them, hey, let's exchange the data. Let's work together. We can build, let's say, better models.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting question. I think there's two parts. I want to just touch on the first part. When you're the carrier and you want to leverage data, you really have to have the right messaging to the client. So we've noticed this. You know, Dave, if I just approached you and I was like, hey, I want to put sensors all over your job site, and you're going to get, you know, some insurance value out of it. I can't really tell you what it is, kind of squishy, right? But also, I'm going to open the kimono, right? I'm really going to show these guys digitally what's happening on your projects. You're going to be like, holy crap, that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Right. So what we've kind of
Agreed.
had to navigate around in the beginning is just that reaction, right? Hell no.
Yeah, the data ownership like clause within the contract is like the thing everybody
It's
goes
the one,
to, right?
right?
Like,
It's always the red line.
Right.
You're like, no, absolutely not. Like, but so the way we've gone around that, and it's not necessarily getting around it, it's just messaging it properly. It's like, look, are we going to partner, or are you in this for short-term return? If you're in this for short-term return, then basically you're going to look at that data and be like, here's the 6 things that you're doing wrong, and we're not going to pay, right? If you're in this for the long haul, which we only approach people that are, they want to look at it and say, we promise we're not going to raise your rates, and we're not going to change the way we do business with you based on what we find. Because what we want to do then is build a better risk process that we can share with you. Because that's not necessarily your core business, and they have the scalability across all of these projects that Dave might not necessarily have the exposure to. So when we go in and actually sell to an insurance carrier, we're like, the first thing you have to understand is that this has to be a two-way street with the end client, the end user.
Yeah.
And that's taken a while because they're like, well, how is this going to help our business? You know, do you have 5 years worth of data? And we're like, no. But as we achieve scale, we're going to actually start to skew the actuarial model because we're introducing this really unknown variable, which is active management that wasn't historical, right? So that's one of the interesting pieces. From the two-way street perspective, that's really tough, man. I mean, it's just a function of your balance sheet, right? Like, you don't really have a lot of leverage. But I think the way to do it is actually piece by piece, right? It's a give and take. So it's like, I'll give this if you give that, right? And so over time, I think you can make the case that these digital technologies scale exponentially, right? And so as you put in more pieces of the puzzle, you get a full picture from everyone. The whole model gets better. The whole industry gets better. The ship rises together. And so what again, back to like the learning process, I think in the beginning it's about finding the right partners. And that might not be like the big carriers of the world, right? That might be a smaller carrier that has a smaller book and is just, you know, hungry to innovate and be competitive. And then you can just go from there. So I'm not sure there's a perfect solution, but I think it's just a function of trial and error sometimes.
Right. And while we're on that note, relationships with carriers, startups need to move really, really fast, right? That's just the nature of it. You need to be agile, you need to build, break, just move as fast as possible. But the corporation or the carrier, the insurance companies, they can't, a lot of them. I'm not gonna paint everyone with the same brush, but there's this huge gap between the pace or speed that insurance company wants to move or can move versus the insurer is willing to move or can move. How would you suggest, Mark, just bridging the gap or closing the gap?
Yeah, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to carry, and why, by the way, we're all collectively at some different point, every carrier in here is guilty as charged. And that's fine because this is actually a journey. And if you think about it, only in the last four years or so, really as the industry really started to engage and learning how to make those changes. That's cultural change within our organizations. How can I go to a P&L owner who's been successful and tell them, you got to change your business. You need to think about things in a different way. Making good money, been successful? No. It's a cultural thing. And you don't flash the technology. Technology is the enabler of innovation. And what I do, I fell into this trap. When I walked into this place, I said, that's a smart team. That's some cool technology. I ran back with the shiny object and said, look for my problem. Where's my problem that I'm going to slap on this? That's the wrong way to approach it. And I think you can take my learnings, both from a startup standpoint and how you engage. and you step back and you understand what problem you're trying to solve. I went back to the business owners and started having those conversations, understanding where their needs are, where their opportunities are. And I also attempted to find a coalition of the willing. There are some I'm not going to move. Bios Candidos, good luck, my friend. I'm going to go with the people who are motivated, who get it, and I'm going to sit down and understand their business and say, what are your use cases? And I build those use cases, and then I landscape the potential solutions. From a startup standpoint, this is all about business development. It's about listening, understanding, and focused on what problems you can solve, and addressing and understanding those problems. And you absolutely need to, and having a level of empathy for the carrier, because it's not heavy, it's not easy going. But as a business, somebody who's eaten what they kill for a long time in my career, you set expectations at every point. You understand who the decision makers are, who are the stakeholders that feed that, and you start to establish decision points so everybody understands through the process what's the next step. At that next step, what is going to guide that decision so that everybody understands where you are in the plan. If they're not following through, then you put your effort somewhere else. And the goal shouldn't be, and this is an evolution, the goal shouldn't be, I got a pilot or I got 10 pilots.
Right.
The goal should be, how much can I put into production and impact our business KPIs? So hopefully that wasn't too deep.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I just want to add, yes, and I think that what you say is the same thing that kind of plays itself out within a large contractor like us, right? Like you have the individuals within the business that you can go to. They're progressive. They can more quickly assess new risk, and so everything you said, I echo. I think what's interesting, just us kind of talking before at lunch, and just hearing you talk, I think there's a really good opportunity to bring this group and maybe your head of risk management, maybe an operational leader within kind of the contractor side, and actually kind of go through it together. Because I think we all have our view of it, right? You have your view of it. Alex is trying to figure out everybody's view of it, right? And so there are a lot of opportunities that I think I'm seeing where you could get that group of people in a room, and maybe even some of your largest, most progressive clients, and start to kind of co-collaborate on here's the opportunity that we see that's going to benefit all of us. I think there's something there for sure.
And Dave, just to add to that, sometimes you don't even know how what you're doing on the site could be beneficial to your insurance partner.
Yep.
Right? That may be something that they're like, oh my gosh, this would be great. And you're like, well, we do that already.
Yep.
Or if we tweak this a little bit, that would be that much more valuable.
Yeah.
So I think there's tremendous amount of value to be said for collaboration.
Yeah, the risk mitigation, the risk management within kind of the construction space at large, there are so many hands in that, right? Because there is so much risk in construction, and there's just so many variables, there's so much lack of predictability. So if you think about it from that standpoint, I do think you have to get all of those people together to actually kind of expose what all those risks and what all those opportunities are, and then you dive.
Awesome. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about startups world a bit. So you're a seed stage startup, we're at seed stage, right? And there are two different types of money that you can take as an investment. There's strategic that Alex's company Polaris decided to take at this stage, and there are other institutional investments. Alex, when you were taking strategic investments, what were you thinking, and was your thesis correct?
Yeah.
Today?
So actually, so we took investments in our seed stage from the CVC arm of a commercial insurance company. And we did that because of a few reasons. Hutch mentioned that venture capital has started to pour into the industry. Not as much as I would like to see, by the way, so let's keep it going. But at the time when I was raising capital about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, there really wasn't a lot. It's really kind of happened in the last 2 years, I'd say. And so when I went out to pitch, I would just sit in a room and people would just start scratching their heads, and they're like, "That's a problem? Like, you had a $40 million frozen pipe water loss?" They're like, "Yeah." And it happens all the time. But it was just funny because, like, I was never going to convince them. Like, they had to have some conception of the market before. And so from a maturity perspective, it just wasn't the case, right? And I would walk into these traditional VCs, and I'd, do my spiel and dog and pony, and I thought it was great. I mean, I was just like, this is a huge market, like, these are major losses. And they're like, "Yeah, but we've never heard about it." And I called my buddy who's in development, and he's never heard about it either. And I'm like, "Well, shit." So, like, I'm never gonna convince you. So then we thought, okay, so like, where's the people that feel the pain? And it was the people who had the problem, right? And so we've seen some contractors starting with corporate venture arms. Some insurance folks have been very successful. The Munich folks here as well. And so what we figured out too was we could kind of kill two birds with one stone, where we were looking at insurance as a distribution channel as well. So we figured if they get our problem and they can help us scale, then why am I beating my head against the wall? Let's take the money. And there's obviously risks that come with that, and people will ask, well, has that prevented you from doing a deal? No, not at all. Actually, I've never been asked. And we're working with like 3 carriers in a really meaningful way right now. Never been asked, and also I fought like hell for the no most favored nations clause, so don't get any ideas out there.
Mark, do you think the same way? If a startup comes to your door and then you want to start working with them, but you know that your competitor or some of your colleagues have invested in the company, how would you look at the startup from that point on?
Absolutely not. I mean, we typically are not. There's always going to be the possibility, and probably most often there's going to be at some point a competitor that may invest. You certainly want to understand that your data is secure and it's not being shared in a way that's going to compromise our business. But we have to expect that. And by the way, it's not a bad thing, because there's a level, and as you talked about, the network effect of having additional data, especially in a lot of these solutions that are driven by AI and machine learning. The larger the data set, the more powerful that solution is. So I think we take the approach that we understand this is a reality, and we do certain contractual things to make sure we're protected.
Okay.
I mean, I would say you're going to be on one end or the other, right? So like, if you're engaged with a startup early and you see the opportunity and you want to make that investment, obviously you want to realize the opportunity, so you want to see your competition take it on. So you can't have the mindset like, oh, they're invested or they started this, I'm not going to invest in that. But then at the same time, you're trying to do that on other opportunities. So I think there was some sensitivity there for a long time. I think that sensitivity is starting to lift.
Awesome. So I think we're right on time, 30 seconds over. I wanted to thank you all for your time. I wanted to thank audience. And if you have any questions, follow-up questions from the panelists, please reach out to them after the panel. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Great job.
All right. Thank you to all the panelists. It was a wonderful conversation. It really does speak to just how diverse the risks are in these industries and the size of the opportunity for us to capture. So kind of continuing on with the theme we have today, we have a couple star presentations who will be focusing on construction and the real estate industry and how we can capture new data to both underwrite and also leverage the same solutions for risk mitigation. So please pay attention to the next couple startup companies. And as a reminder, we do have the Brella app. You can find information on the companies there. And you can ask questions that we'll read at the end. Great. All right, to start us off, I would like to introduce our very first startup company, Notion.